I came home to empty beds. My twin children were gone. Then my phone rang. Judge Martinez? We have your children. It was the HOA president. They took my kids over a garden dispute. They had no idea I was a federal judge. Now they'll learn what true justice means. Before watching full video, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. The moment I saw those empty beds, my heart stopped. Their dinosaur blankets were thrown aside, stuffed animals scattered on the floor. My twins, only 7 years old, were gone. My phone rang, unknown number. With shaking hands I answered. Judge Martinez? We have your children. In that moment, my two worlds collided. To most people in our new neighborhood, I was just Sophia Martinez, a single mother who had recently moved in. Few knew that in my professional life I was federal judge Sophia Martinez with 15 years on the bench. I had deliberately kept my career private, wanting a normal life for my children away from the spotlight. Who is this? I demanded, struggling to keep my voice steady. Westlake Homeowners Association. Your children are safe for now. But we need to discuss your continued violations of community standards. My blood turned to ice, then boiled with rage. The HOA had taken my children over landscaping disputes? It seemed impossible, yet the evidence was right before me, empty beds and a threatening call. Where are my children? I fought to keep my voice level, despite the panic rising in my chest. They're enjoying cookies at Mrs. Hoffman's house, our HOA president. We've been trying to reach you about your unapproved garden for weeks. Perhaps now we'll have your attention. It had started 3 months ago when I moved my family to Westlake Estates, a seemingly perfect suburban community with good schools and safe streets. As a federal judge who handled high-profile cases, I wanted anonymity and normalcy for my twins, Miguel and Lucia. The problems began when I planted a vegetable garden in our backyard. Miguel suffered from severe food allergies, and growing our own produce was the safest option. The garden was neat, productive, and, most importantly, hidden behind a privacy fence. 2 days after planting, I received my first notice. Vegetable gardens violate Westlake Estates Covenants, Section 14.3. I requested an exemption based on medical necessity. Denied. I modified the garden to be more ornamental. Another violation notice appeared. The notices escalated to daily letters, then fines. $50 per day became $100, then $200. When I refused to pay for what I believed was a reasonable accommodation, they shut off our water. I installed rain barrels. They declared those violations too. Each week brought new harassment. They complained about the color of my curtains, visible through the windows. They measured the height of my grass with rulers. They photographed my children's bicycles when left on the porch for more than an hour. I tried reasoning with them, explaining Miguel's medical needs without revealing my profession. Carol Hoffman, the HOA president, a woman with perfectly coiffed blonde hair and a permanent disapproving frown, simply said, "Rules are rules. If we make an exception for you, we'd have to make them for everyone." What I didn't tell her was that I had specialized in housing discrimination cases before becoming a judge. I knew the Fair Housing Act inside and out. Medical accommodations weren't optional, they were legally required. But I wanted to resolve this peacefully, for my children's sake, until they crossed the ultimate line. Put my children on the phone right now, I demanded, heart pounding. They're having such a good time. Mrs. Hoffman's voice was sickeningly sweet. We're just having a little HOA emergency meeting. You should join us, 4 p.m. sharp at my house. Bring your checkbook for those fines. Oh, and prepare to discuss the removal of that eyesore garden. The line went dead. I checked the time, 3:30 p.m. My hands trembled not just with fear but with rage. They had taken my children. In 15 years on the federal bench, I had sentenced murderers and mobsters, but no criminal had ever dared to touch my family. These suburban tyrants had crossed a line that would destroy them. I took 3 deep breaths, my judicial training kicking in. Revenge would be precise, calculated, and completely legal. I called 911 first, reporting my children taken by neighbors without permission. Then I called my clerk at the courthouse. "James, I need emergency legal documents prepared." "Yes, it's a personal matter." I explained the situation quickly. "I need a temporary restraining order against the Westlake HOA board, citing harassment and discrimination under the Fair Housing Act. And contact Judge Williams for signature. I can't sign my own order. While waiting, I made 3 more calls, to the FBI Civil Rights Division, to a prosecutor friend in the U.S. Attorney's Office, and to a reporter who owed me a favor. This wouldn't just be about getting my children back, it would be about making an example of anyone who dared to use children as pawns in their petty power games. I changed from my weekend gardening clothes into a tailored suit, pinned my hair back severely, and grabbed my judicial credentials. For the first time since moving to Westlake, I would reveal exactly who they were dealing with. At precisely 4 p.m., I knocked on Carol Hoffman's door, briefcase in hand. She opened it with a triumphant smile that quickly faltered when she saw my appearance. "Where are my children?" I asked calmly. "They're in the living room with the other board members." "Now, about those violations." I cut her off by opening my credentials. "I am Federal Judge Sophia Martinez. You have 30 seconds to bring my children to me before I have officers arrest every person in this room for kidnapping." Her face went pale. This is some kind of joke." From behind me came the sound of police sirens. "No joke, Mrs. Hoffman. And this," I pulled out papers from my briefcase, "is a temporary restraining order against the Westlake HOA board, signed by Judge Williams of the Federal District Court. You are prohibited from coming within 100 feet of my family or property." The other board members had gathered in the hallway, confusion and fear on their faces. Miguel and Lucia ran toward me from the living room. "Mommy!" they cried in unison, throwing themselves into my arms. I held them tightly, relief washing over me. 2 police officers appeared behind me. "Judge Martinez? We received your call." "Officers, these individuals removed my minor children from our home without permission." My voice was calm but cold. "I have chosen not to press kidnapping charges at this time, provided they comply fully with this restraining order." Mrs. Hoffman sputtered, "We didn't kidnap anyone. We were just watching them until you arrived to discuss HOA violations. Did you have permission to enter my property and remove my children?" I asked. Silence. That's what I thought. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal activity. I filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against the Westlake HOA for violations of the Fair Housing Act, citing their refusal to provide reasonable accommodation for my son's medical condition. I submitted documentation of their harassment, including their own meticulous records of violations. I also filed for emergency injunctive relief, allowing me to maintain my garden while the case proceeded. It was granted within 48 hours. What I hadn't anticipated was the media attention. Federal judge battles tyrannical HOA made headlines across the country. Other Westlake residents began to come forward with their own stories of HOA harassment. Maria Gonzalez, an elderly widow who had been fined for having a religious statue in her garden. The Patels, who had been repeatedly cited for cooking odors when preparing traditional Indian meals. The Johnsons, a black family who received violation notices for unapproved decorations after putting up Kwanzaa symbols, while Christmas decorations on other homes went unsighted. A pattern of discriminatory enforcement emerged. What had begun as my personal battle transformed into a landmark housing discrimination case. 3 months after that terrifying day when my children were taken, we had our day in court. I recused myself, of course, but watched from the gallery as my attorney presented our case before Judge Williams. Carol Hoffman and the HOA board members sat stone-faced as evidence mounted against them. Their own documentation revealed selective enforcement targeting minorities, families with children, and residents with disabilities. The HOA's attorney argued that the covenants were applied uniformly and that I had known about the rules when purchasing my home. "Your Honor," my attorney countered, "the Fair Housing Act explicitly prohibits discriminatory housing practices, including the denial of reasonable accommodations for persons with disabilities." The HOA repeatedly denied such accommodation for Judge Martinez's son, despite medical documentation. Judge Williams ruled decisively, his voice thundering through the courtroom. "This court finds the actions of the Westlake Estates HOA not only discriminatory but egregious. Taking children from their home over landscaping disputes shows a disturbing abuse of power." The HOA board members squirmed in their seats as he continued. "The board is found in violation of federal law and ordered to pay $2.5 million in damages to affected families." Gasps filled the courtroom. Additionally, each board member will personally pay $100,000 to Judge Martinez's children for emotional distress. Carol Hoffman's face crumpled as the judge continued. All board members are prohibited from serving on any HOA board for 10 years. The entire board will undergo mandatory civil rights training, and 3 federal monitors will oversee Westlake Estates operations for the next 5 years. He looked directly at Carol. And Mrs. Hoffman, the court is referring this matter to the district attorney for possible criminal charges of custodial interference. This court will not tolerate what amounts to child abduction as an HOA enforcement tactic. I sat silently watching justice unfold. The very laws I had upheld for years were now protecting my family. The revenge wasn't personal, it was legal, thorough, and devastating to those who had threatened my children. Most importantly, they were permanently enjoined from interfering with reasonable accommodations for medical needs, including my garden. One year later, Westlake Estates looks different. Our community garden, yes, a community garden, flourishes where once there was only uniform grass. Families gather there, sharing gardening tips and produce. Miguel teaches other children about his favorite vegetables, proudly explaining how he can eat them safely because we grow them ourselves. Carol Hoffman was forced to sell her house far below market value after criminal charges were filed. The community watched in silent satisfaction as the moving truck carried away her possessions. The other board members faced similar fates. Some lost jobs once their employers learned of their involvement in the discrimination case, others faced social ostracism from neighbors who had suffered under their petty tyranny for years. My legal colleagues helped affected residents file personal lawsuits against individual board members. One by one they settled, depleting their savings and retirement accounts. The neighborhood grapevine hummed with stories of their financial ruin, a fitting consequence for years of terrorizing families over trivial violations. Some called it karma. I called it justice. The new HOA board, elected by residents eager for change, includes Maria Gonzalez, Mr. Patel, and me. We meet monthly to discuss genuine community concerns, not the length of someone's grass or the color of their curtains. The former board members' homes were purchased by families they had previously driven away, a poetic form of revenge that gave me quiet satisfaction every time I passed their houses. Sometimes, in the quiet evenings while my children play safely in our yard, I think about that terrible day. How close I came to losing everything that matters. How my position of privilege and knowledge of the law allowed me to fight back when others could not. It reminds me why I became a judge in the first place. To protect the vulnerable and uphold justice, even in the smallest of communities. My court cases now often feature HOA disputes. I listen carefully to both sides, but I never forget what it feels like to be the homeowner facing an overzealous board. I ensure that the law is applied fairly, that reasonable accommodations are granted, and that no one uses petty power to harass their neighbors. Miguel and Lucia are thriving. Their school friends visit often, playing in our yard where vegetables and flowers now grow together in beautiful harmony. Sometimes they even take produce home to their families, with approval from our new, more compassionate HOA. Last week, a moving truck arrived next door. I brought over a welcome basket with vegetables from our garden and introduced myself simply as Sophia, your neighbor. No mention of Judge Martinez. That title stays at the courthouse where it belongs. But I did mention one thing to my new neighbors as I handed them the basket of homegrown tomatoes and peppers. We have a lovely community garden if you'd like to join us. Everyone is welcome here. And they are. Because that's what a true community should be, a place where rules exist to protect, not to control. Where differences are celebrated, not penalized. And where no parent ever has to fear that someone will take their children over the height of their grass or the vegetables in their garden. Sometimes justice comes in unexpected packages. Sometimes it looks like a 7-year-old boy with allergies, happily picking tomatoes he can safely eat. Sometimes it looks like neighbors from different backgrounds sharing gardening tips across adjoining fences. And sometimes, it looks like a mother who refuses to back down when what matters most is threatened. My name is Sophia Martinez. I am a federal judge, a gardener, and a mother. And I am home.